A very warm welcome to Titanic Honour and Glory, bringing history to life where the past is always present. It's a great privilege to welcome you to along this presentation. In this presentation, we're going to be talking about the true love story on board the R.M.S. Titanic, that being love of the sea. So let's sit back and enjoy this fascinating and very intriguing talk. We're going to take a look at where it all began, and that is here in Foregate Street in Worcester. Now, the gentleman that you can see on the screen just now is Henry Samuel Morley. He was the owner of Morley's high-class confectioners, and he had shops in Birmingham, Great Malvern, and here in Foregate Street in Worcestershire. It was a real thriving shop, and it was very popular with many of the school children across the Midlands. So here we have Henry Samuel Morley's shop in Foregate Street in Worcestershire, and we can see there's a lovely lady here. This is Kate Louise Phillips. Now, Kate Louise Phillips was a 19-year-old girl, and she actually was employed as a shop assistant in Morley's high-class confectioners. Morley's was a favourite for all the school children. Many would come and go, and Henry would visit his shops very frequently to make sure that they're running very well. And it was here that he would catch up with Kate, and he would be asking her how things were going in the Foregate Street shop especially, and to which she would reply that, many children are coming in and very, buying so many things from the shop. It was a very firm favourite for all the children in the Midlands. She was very much of a loving girl. She was very compassionate. She was very kind. She was very caring. And so much so, it showed in her way that she worked. She was very proud to welcome all those children, and she, in many occasions, would give them a little extra sweets and treats. Well, Henry Samuel Morley was actually visiting his shop, and that, this friendship would blossom. Then more, where a love would form. And actually, the two of them, Kate Louise Phillips and Henry, began to fall in love. Now, Henry was 20 years her senior, Kate was only 19 years old. So there was a big dramatic difference in the age. Now, the problem was that Henry was already married. So that again was going to cause a problem for them, because in Edwardian society, this was very much frowned upon. Nothing like this should ever happen. And it really was in society at the time. Really, it was looked on as a disgrace, to be honest with you. So we get an idea of what Henry Samuel Morley would do next. He was very close with his brother, who was a partner in the business as well. And as we can see, decisions had to be made. And that decision was made that Henry would take a share of his side of the company. So what he would ostensibly do is he would say to everyone that he was going away to recuperate from an illness that he was going through. He would go abroad. But in actual fact, he was actually planning to elope, to emigrate to America with his new love, Kate Louise Phillips. A token of his love for Kate, what he did was he went to the Birmingham jewellery quarter, where he purchased this beautiful and stunning sapphire and diamond necklace. Now, this necklace was purchased to take on to their voyage on the Titanic, and later for their new life in America. He was so devoted to this young girl, this 19-year-old beautiful woman, Kate, that he loved her so much, and he openly expressed this to her many occasions. So what happened was they boarded the Titanic under ticket number 250655 for a grand cost of £26. They boarded the Titanic under the assumed names of Mr. and Mrs. Marshall, because obviously at that time in Edwardian society, they were carrying a secret. They didn't want anyone else to know about it. So people on board the Titanic thought that they were actually a married couple, where in fact they weren't. So they carried the secret even on board the Titanic with them, traveling in second class. Second class was almost equivalent to first class in any other ocean liner at the time. That's how grand second class was on Titanic. In the cabin, they would have a cabin such as this one. And here we can see Kate and Henry enjoying their time on board, getting to know more about this beautiful ship, and also looking forward to their future. They were going to be going to San Francisco. That's where they're going to be immigrating to. They're going to be looking to start up a new life and a new business. Perhaps Henry was looking to start up a new life as a confectioner over there. It's what he was really dreaming about at the time. They would have a steward service, such as you can see on the screen just now, with the stewardess who would attend to Kate's every daily needs. So she must have felt like a queen on board the Titanic. The second class boat deck, very spacious and very grand. For a working class girl who was not accustomed to such grandeur as this must have felt an incredible experience and a life that lay ahead for her. Promenading on the decks with her beloved Henry taking her arm. And in the second class dining room, what a sight to be seen. Beautiful chinaware serving succulent dishes, as you can see in this example menu from the Titanic. Steward service bringing every appetizing meal to your table. It was something unheard of in, Edwardian society, especially for Kate coming from a working class background. And here you can see the sapphire and diamond necklace that Henry would give to Kate as a token of his love on Titanic's last night at sea, and how much she must have shone through the dining room as she entered that privileged world that evening, Sunday, April 14th, 1912. Their last night together would have been Sunday, April 14th, 1912. And it's important to remember that this was an incredible sunset that many actually took the time to view on deck. Perhaps after the service, the divine service with Reverend Ernest Carter, they would have went onto the boat deck like many other passengers did at the time and held one another and looked as the sunset was going down and the Titanic was sailing into her destiny. Disaster strikes. 11:40 p.m., April 14th, 1912. High up in the crow's nest, as we can see here, we have Fred Fleet. Now, Fred Fleet was looking ahead and he could see a huge berg coming to the starboard side of the Titanic. He rang that bell 3 times. Iceberg right ahead, he shouted. All the bridge officers running around trying to turn the ship in time. Hard a starboard, full astern, close the watertight doors, hard a port. And sadly, the in vain efforts failed. Titanic would sideswipe the iceberg and sadly sink to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean later in the morning on Monday, April 15th, 1912. The second class boat deck was absolute pandemonium. Many people were shouting. You couldn't be heard because of the steam that was belching from the steam pipes actually in the forward funnels. It was so deafening, the noise. The officers were frantically trying to get lifeboats launched. What must have been incredible for this young girl, 19-year-old Kate, actually on this boat deck, passing through the second class area, as you can see here, knowing that there's something dramatically wrong and something serious is wrong with the Titanic. So Henry takes Kate to the lifeboat and he takes her hand and he says to her, "Goodbye, my sweetheart." He tells her how much she was loved by him. And he gives her the sealskin purse with the cabin trunk keys in her possession. And all she has is a nightgown on, a jacket, and slippers. Unbelievable. And she looks at him in the eye and she knows there's something wrong. And in lifeboat number 11, as we can see, as the lifeboats are being rowed further away, she transfixed her eyes onto the place where she last seen her beloved Henry. But then she lost him in the crowds as the crowds and the panic began to occur in the Titanic's final moments. It's something that she would never forget. It's something that would traumatize her for the rest of her life as she would hear the ship breaking apart, the screams, the chaos that was going on Titanic, and the ship breaking apart, and the hymn, "Nearer, My God, to Thee," being played by the heroic orchestra as the Titanic is sinking. Then a ship, their saviour, the Carpathia, is travelling 58 miles away under the command of Captain Arthur Henry Rostron. He was actually at full speed to get to the Titanic's position, a place where he would arrive 4 hours after the fateful collision. arriving at precisely 4 o'clock in the morning. So Titanic had now been sunk for over an hour and a half. The life expectancy was 5 to 6 minutes in the freezing cold Atlantic waters. Sadly, he would arrive just too late, as over 1,500 souls would perish on the Titanic. 705 survivors were all that were picked up by the Carpathia, thanks to this incredibly heroic man and his crew of the R.M.S. Carpathia, Captain Arthur Henry Rostron. Captain Arthur Rostron then decides to take the Carpathia back to New York with the survivors on board. What an incredible journey this must have been, heartfelt. Many women and children were looking for husbands, looking for fathers, looking for brothers, trying to get as much information to see if they were coming on other ships, and sadly, they would never arrive. And for young Kate, it must have been soul-destroying and so much of a heartbreak to realise that she had lost her beloved Henry. The sad loss of life was unbelievable. How this beautiful ship could sink on her maiden voyage was unthinkable. 1,500 to 1,800 dead were reported by the newspapers in New York. Newspaper boys all over Britain were standing shouting, "Read all about it, Titanic sunk." And yet, for Kate, the return to Britain was going to happen. She boarded the White Star Liner Celtic that was chartered to bring the survivors back to England. And when she arrived, she didn't realise that she was going to have to face Britain again and to face the secret affair that they had. And this would now be known by many people in Worcestershire. Little did she know that she had actually fallen pregnant on board the Titanic. In actual fact, through the mid-Atlantic voyage, she had conceived a baby. And this beautiful baby would then be born in 1913. Her beautiful daughter, as she always said, just such a tragedy that Henry never had the opportunity to see his beautiful daughter. All that she had was the sealskin purse, her cabin trunk keys, and a necklace given to her by her beloved Henry when she returned to England. And for many years, Ellen Mary Walker campaigned and she pleaded to have her father recognised as her father, to have his name on her birth certificate. She would be a Titanic ambassador in many ways, attending conventions, going to exhibitions, and telling everyone her incredible, fascinating, and yet true story of the love of her mother and her father on board the Titanic. She was forever in the shadow of the Titanic. She would attend events, exhibitions, and many gatherings there with other Titanic survivors. She would sign postcards. She would be autographed in many books. And many years ago, she would say to me personally, "I just really want to be remembered as Henry's daughter." She had an incredible life. She worked for the British Passport Office with the government. And through that time, she actually became a witness to the notorious Cray twins during their upcoming trials. And because she testified against them, she was under witness protection, as she always laughed at the time to tell us her story. During World War II, she was in the London Underground and she helped to calm people, singing to them, relaxing them, keeping them calm as the German Luftwaffe bombed London during the Blitz. An incredible lady who had seen so much history throughout her life. And yet, her connection to the Titanic with her father, Henry Samuel Morley, was still to be recognised. Her life's only wish, as she put it, was to be recognised and have father unknown removed from her birth certificate, to then having Henry Samuel Morley recognised as her father. Sadly, this would never ever come. Sadly, Ellen would pass away in her care home in Worcester. And it was with great regret that such a loving lady who was so caring and so much always happy to see other people happy, she never was granted her wish, that being her father being recognised. One wish that she did have was to be reunited with her father, and that actually happened. One wish that was granted. After her funeral service, her ashes were scattered at sea, as close to the North Atlantic as possible, just off Cornwall. And here we can see a beautiful service taken on board the Royal National Lifeboat. And here we can imagine that scene, the sadness, but yet of a happy ending, where she was finally reunited with her father after many long years. We do hope that you have enjoyed this presentation. We'd like to thank you, and if you have any questions or if we can be of any further assistance, please do not hesitate to contact me. We'll be more than happy to help. Thank you very much.